Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Military Mondays. If you and I don't know each other, I would love to get to know you. Please send me a private message or write get to know in the comments below. But I'm a 27-year Air Force veteran, and if you've been following me, you know my story. If you don't, go back and watch past episodes at militarymondays.info. That's militarymondays with an S.info. And you can learn my story because it's quite, I'll just say this, I've served on all sides of the military. So to learn more, you're going to have to go watch the last episode. So with that, if you are a veteran-owned business, the spouse of a veteran, or maybe the child of a veteran, which is what we have on today, I would love to get to know you because I'd love to shout you out on a Monday morning and interview you to get the word out about your business. So today, Ed and I met a few weeks ago, probably about a month ago, through BNI, through networking. There is a theme to my Military Mondays. Most of the people I meet through networking. So Ed is a videographer, and he and I had an extensive conversation last week, and I learned about his background as a child of a veteran. His dad served. So welcome to the show this morning, Ed.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
So let's start with your background in the military. Obviously, you didn't serve, but in a way you did. I believe that children also serve and spouses serve because you didn't actually, a spouse gets to choose the person that they marry and choose to have that lifestyle. Children are brought into that lifestyle and really don't have a choice. So tell us what it was like growing up in a military family with a dad that was Army.
Well, I mean, so yeah, my dad served 25 years, and I'll tell you, it was a roller coaster. I mean, moving around a lot, meeting all kinds of different people, making different friends, and then having those friendships, fade away as you move around, isn't the easiest thing, but you get used to it after a while. So it kind of, develops skills in terms of adapting, right? Like kind of, learning your new environment and finding new friends and kind of understanding the, how that affects you, as a person. For a while, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. It was kind of hard to kind of be involved in that and not really have any choice or say in that. But after a while and kind of reaching the age that I'm at now, I kind of realized that it's there's a lot of skills that I've gained from that experience. There's a lot of mental skills in terms of being able to meet people, talk to people, because of just the experience of being able to do that constantly in all parts of the world, like Germany, Maryland, Savannah, Georgia, here, to name a few. So it's been a journey, but I will say that I wouldn't be the person I am today without the experiences of being a military dependent.
So you and I talked last week, and we talked about when your dad was serving in Germany and you were over in Germany, about wanting the education, and you wanted a U.S. education. So let's talk about that and how you got into what you're doing today. Just talk about that, because maybe there's a dependent on watching right now that's maybe they're at that college age and they're making decisions. So let's talk about that for a second, and then we'll get into how you got doing what you're doing and partnered with your partner and how you're helping businesses.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, we were in Germany shortly after I graduated high school, and I was still kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. And the more I thought about it, the more I kind of realized that, video, film, and media production was kind of my calling. Like, it's something I've always really been interested in. I just never really kind of sat down and thought about it and focused on it. And so, I had the opportunity to, start my college education in Germany, but I also knew that being in Germany was only temporary. We'd come back to the States. So I was able to make the decision of joining, a college education for Full Sail University online. And so that I knew that, coming back, I would still have like a US based education. And that if I wanted to, I could potentially go to the campus and stuff like that when we returned. So that was kind of my thought process. I just didn't want to uh, necessarily be completely attached to Germany, and have my education there. And I kind of personally thrived over, the online education rather than being in person, just because it was, for one, it was an accelerated program. So, you know, there wasn't, very many breaks. It would be, maybe a week or two in between for holidays and things like that. And, you'd have just like I said, it would just be, pretty streamlined. And so instead of like having to be like 3 or 4 year education, it ended up being like a 2 year. And being over there in Germany, I had a lot of time to be able to do that. Like I was able to, I didn't have to work, right? So I had a lot of time to be able to just, be at home and be on my computer. And they sent a whole bunch of things like camera, tripod, all this stuff included in the tuition, which was great because I was able to still do all kinds of, projects and things like that for assignments over there. So that was a lot of fun. Um, and in that case, for any other dependents, like getting into that era or that area of joining, college or choosing what they want to do, my best advice is just really sit and think about it, and don't rush yourself into something that you may not enjoy. It's really important, and it's really important to really kind of consider and take your options seriously. Um, Figure out, does online education sound like an option for you? Because, you might be working or you don't have to work and you have a lot of time that you can spend and you might excel in that space more. Or do you want to go to an actual college and live on campus? Or yeah, so there's a lot of options, and it's just my biggest advice would be to make sure that you take the time to figure out what you want to do, make sure that you're happy with it, and don't force yourself in a timeline, because I truly believe everybody has their own timeline. Everybody has their own uh, path that they get to make choices in, and shouldn't feel rushed in any certain capacity.
So you're obviously you went to school for videography and that's what you're doing today. But before we talk about that, we talked about a little bit about the skills that you learned as a dependent that make you a good business owner today. You talked about flexibility in that. What would you say are the other skills that you learned when you were a dependent that help you to be super successful today in owning your own business?
Yeah, so for one, I mean, my dad being in the Army, he instilled a lot of what's the word? I guess accountability, and responsibility, like waking up early and making sure that you do everything that you need to do and on a day-to-day basis, staying organized, and yeah, that's one of the biggest ones, especially as a business owner, is accountability, time management, and organization. Those things were just instilled from my father, and I couldn't be as effective as a business owner as I am today without those main things. Moving around a lot too as a dependent, like I said, it's a lot about meeting people, talking to people, learning how to chat with people, and how to get along. And that's a big asset in terms of being a business owner as well, because you have to network, you have to talk to people, you have to know how to communicate, whether it's talking to potential partners, other business owners, to help with referrals, or to the bottom line where it comes to sales, or talking to a potential client about how you can help them. That one's a crucial skill as well, that just came along with the territory of moving around and having to adapt to different cultures and different kind of you know people, areas, things like that.
So
Those would be my main I mean,
So would you say that as a dependent, you truly, because you've lived in different countries and that, you truly get to know the other person, trying to, let me find the right words. So if you're a civilian, you generally don't move around a lot, and it's the
right,
same people over and over again, and you get to know them really well. So you don't have to, in a short period of time, assess and build relationships quickly because they're built over time generally. So
exactly.
would you say that you tend to listen better as a dependent, growing up in the military than I'm stereotyping, and I don't want to stereotype, but I think it's true that we just, I don't know what it is. It's a skill that you can't even really verbalize it,
Yeah,
that most people don't realize they have, whether they serve, they're a dependent or they're a spouse. Most people don't think of those soft skills that they learn. They don't think how great they are to be a business owner, to own your own business, whether that be a franchise, whether that be starting your own business like you and your partner did, whether that be network marketing, direct sales, doesn't matter what it is. But there are so many skills that the military in general that you learn,
absolutely.
that I think people just don't, they take it for granted, and
Yeah.
they don't think they, have unique skills, and they do. So
Mhm.
sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent. I'm still not coming up with the words I wanted to come up with, but
That's
anyways.
okay.
So you just launched your business here recently. I mean, you've been doing videography for a while, but you ended up partnering up with someone else that you met out networking,
Exactly.
building relationships, and you found a partnership where the two of you have a little bit of different skill set, but together it's a powerhouse. So let's talk about what you're doing today, how you're helping businesses, especially veteran owned businesses, to get the word out about their business.
Yeah, so me and my business partner, we started Black Fox Visuals this year. Both of us have a combined around 13 years of experience in just the videography film space. And we decided to combine our efforts, rebrand, re-strategize, and become a media production agency. And basically what that entails is, anything on a screen, we can make, but is the most simplest way we can put it. But the way we help businesses is realistically, helping businesses, target demographics and appeal to those demographics. Because, the main thing, a famous, popular quote in marketing is that if you market to everyone, you market to no one.
Right.
And it's very important to make sure that you, as a business owner, whatever product or service you're selling, that you hone in onto your key demographic, and that you advertise or market to that demographic, so that way you can bring in your ideal client without having to truly think about it or have them even think about it. Because naturally, people will gravitate towards your product, your brand, or your service, just on the way you conduct business. It's almost like, your friend group. If you have a group of friends, most of them will be a pretty good reflection of who you are and your character, because they gravitate towards who you are and your behavior. It's the same way. It's the same thing in terms of marketing, in terms of, business strategy is, I'm going to obviously work with this person over this person that offer the same service because I just get along with this person better, or I like their branding better, or I like the color scheme, I like their things that you wouldn't necessarily truly think about. It's kind of, you know so your subconscious, right? So we help businesses, through product highlights, stories, storytelling, landing pages, things like that. We help them create a vision to express a story, because stories sell, right? Facts tell, stories tell, or what I mean.
Yes.
But and with video, I truly believe that it's the king of media. The it's the best way to portray a message to any specific audience, because it's controllable. You can decide how you send your message. So that way, when a certain kind of person sees that message, they automatically want to work with you. So that's one of the few things. I mean, we've also worked on, music videos, uh, pretty much anything in the visual space, videography, animation, 3D rendering, 3D rendering for architectural work, or, product development, animation for explainer videos, things like that. Video and animation like hybrids. So, you get a little bit more poppy elements that kind of, hold that engagement and intention a little bit more. But yeah, so, that's mainly how we like to tell people that we can help in their businesses is, visual storytelling. How can we, you know, tell the story of you and your service and your product, because every business that has a story, every business owner has their story of why they do what they do. And I think it's vital to express that to, your audience.
So, and I know that you and your partner have a unique model. It's different. So let's talk a little bit about that. You and I talked about it last week, why your model is the way it is versus the typical media production company.
Yeah. So, a lot of agencies, they'll kind of just give you a price tag and a, deliverable time. Like, here's a 30-second video. This is the price. That's that. We'll get started, blah, blah, blah. So coming out of COVID, my business partner and I kind of rebranded, re-strategized to kind of think more of the, how can we assist, small businesses as well coming out of COVID, without, breaking the bank. And we kind of thought that, more of a, a la carte method would be beneficial in terms of like, smaller projects, because not every business owner requires like, a TV level high quality commercial, with all kinds of crazy elements and like, a set and all that stuff. So, we offered like, hey, let's build it off of what they need. If they only need, an hour's worth of video and they just need a simple edit and a couple hours of editing, that price point is completely different than just, here's, 30-second video, it's $1,500, right? And obviously, like, we have the capability of doing that with any business. Like, if they do want to take it to that level of, having a studio space and a crew and like, that high quality production for TV, we have the resources. We subcontract based off of the size of the contract. Um, Things like that, like we've worked on a small scale with local businesses. Shout out to the Green Line Grill. They're amazing. Their burgers are great. They won, I believe, gold in the Colorado Springs Burger Week. So definitely give them a check them out. But also to, the city of Pueblo for their food project, with the Wix and app services. We're doing a video campaign for them that's informational. So that's a good one too. Saunders, the construction, like Saunders Norwood, they, we're working with them to, well, there's specific details that I'm assuming I'm going to hold
Right.
back on, but that's a much larger scope of
Right.
of a contract, right? So it's like, we strive to, be able to work with any business, on the large and small scales, private, public sectors, that kind of thing. And yeah, so that's kind of what kind of separates us, I believe, from, bigger agencies, is that we like to work with our clients to figure out their needs and make sure that, they're getting the best, quality for their budget.
Awesome. So everything from small to large. But like you and I talked last week, and even somebody who is looking to just take their videos, like podcasts. Sorry, Alexa's in the background trying to talk to me because computers are amazing. There we go. But you can just take your reels. So if somebody is taking video of you, if you're a speaker or an author or a trainer, you can take snippets of all of those different trainings that you've done and put those together in a highlight reel if somebody's looking for that. We talked about that last week. Yep. So there's lots that they can do. Who is, obviously we've talked all the way from small to large business? Who's your ideal client, Edward?
I would say that, this one's a tough one because sometimes I'm drawn to just saying like, realistically, any business that is looking to better target their demographic, their market, not they feel like they're not efficiently, you know, capitalizing on the digital market space and want some assistance in terms of having a campaign that can help them target that audience, and kind of hone in on that ideal client and be able to market to those people. Um, that's more of the broader, scheme of it. But a power partner, like I like meeting with power partners, people that are in marketing and advertising that need an in-house video team that can assist in their campaigns. A lot of marketing and advertising agencies, they specialize in helping businesses capitalize on marketing, obviously. And a big part of that, it comes video content. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a long video. It can be little snippets for social media. It can be little things for Facebook, to large scale things where if part of your brand is a podcast, we can help with that. If part of your brand is an interview scheme like this, but you just need like a little bit higher quality, we have the equipment to back it up, things like that. So that's kind of the realm. Yeah.
Awesome. So we're coming to a close on our time. What words of advice, we've already given a little bit of words of advice for dependents that might be looking at colleges, but what words of advice for anybody, any dependent right now? Maybe it's a younger child that's really frustrated with their parents moving them every 3 to 5 years. What words of advice would you have for them if they're watching, or maybe their parents are watching and could share this with them?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's, obviously that's not the easiest situation. But the best way that I was able to handle it is, kind of recognize that, not a lot of people have like go through that. I mean, there are a lot of people that go through that because there's a lot of dependents in military, obviously, but um with that being said, there are a lot of people that don't have to go through that because they live in the same area and they just kind of build their bonds and have their own family and this, that, the other. So, my main thing is to kind of recognize yourself and realize like, that there's a lot of skills and a lot of things that you're learning and going through that will benefit you later on in life. And the sooner that you can recognize those positives, the more that you can reap in the benefits. Kind of like look at yourself and kind of realize what are things that you've learned because of, said situation, like moving around and having to change basically everything, like your friends, your circle, everything like that. What are you learning and how is it making you grow as a person? And once you can kind of really focus on those positives, like I said, you can really kind of excel and capitalize on those things. And at the end of the day, like I still talk to, friends that I've had for, 10, 12 years. And I don't necessarily live near them anymore, but um, there will always be those friends that will stick with you through it all. So it's, yeah, it's not the funnest thing to have to move, constantly and lose friends and say goodbye and this, that, the other, but also look at the other side of the door, right? There's more opportunities. There's more people you're going to meet on the other side as well. And that, friends and people will always be there. So just hold on to that and just stay positive as much as you possibly can.
Awesome. So I know that we said, I forgot to say it at the beginning of the video, but I did put it in the comments or in the post that if people stuck around till the end, there was an offer, a giveaway. So I know that you have a heart for helping people. So let's talk about the two different things that we were talking about pre going live that you're willing to share with people.
Absolutely. So for me, my passion has always been film and media production and just like satisfying the creative side of my mind. And so anybody that is interested in that space, I have a lot of experience with it. We still have, like, we're working here in Colorado Springs doing projects and things like that. And so if there's anybody that's interested in looking into it, or like, potentially like an internship or like a learning program, or just like, coming along with us on one of our shoots and helping and kind of learning about the film production, pre-production or post-production process, I'd love to have you and just reach out. And you can email me or call me at like edlujan@blackfoxvisuals.com, or 719-347-5385. And just, yeah, just give me a call. Let me know that you're interested. And I'll, we can set something up and have you join us on one of our productions, as well as anybody watching, or like, military, like veteran owned businesses and things like that. If you need any kind of production or any kind of project that you have in mind, we're offering a 15% discount on any of the projects right now. So essentially, just let me know that you're a part of Military Mondays. You saw the broadcast, and we'll be able to offer you that.
Awesome. So if you are maybe a teenager, or you're in college and you're considering doing videography or media, I highly recommend you reach out to Ed. Yes, if you're in the local area, it's going to be easier because they have internships here, but Ed's willing, just like he said, he did his education online. So if you're not here in Colorado Springs, don't let that stop you from reaching out to him. They also do video production across the US. So you don't have to be here in Colorado Springs. So if you're watching this and you have a business someplace else, please reach out to Ed. They can still help. They are bidding on a contract. I think it was in Minnesota. Was that where it was? Minnesota right now. So they have the capability of doing video anywhere and bringing in a production team anywhere. So don't let that stop you. I wanted to make sure we let our audience know that they didn't have to be right here in the Colorado Springs or Colorado area. So any last parting words, something maybe that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about, Ed?
I mean, we covered most of it. I mean, at the end of the day, thanks for everybody's time. Thanks for joining us. It's always a pleasure, Brenda, for always talking. It's always a good conversation. And like I said, for any independents, going through it, I know I've had my fair share of rough times. Just stay positive and always look to, the next day and the next door, the next opportunity.
Yeah, and reach out to other military dependents. I'm sure that Ed, if you're struggling right now, I'm sure Ed would even be glad to have a conversation with you or point you in a direction of somebody in your area that you could chat with if you're just struggling right now. So thanks so much for being on, Ed. I really appreciate you taking time out on a Monday morning. And if you are a veteran-owned business, a spouse of a veteran, or military member, so a veteran or a spouse or a child, a dependent, and you own a business, I would love to have a conversation with you and maybe feature you on a Military Mondays. So again, go to militarymondays.info. That's Military Mondays with an S.info. And you can register to be on an upcoming show, or you can see past shows there. So with that, thanks again for being on, Ed. Thanks for joining in. If you are watching, or if you're even watching the replay, thank you for tuning in. We would love if you would like and share this with your network to get the word out about Ed and his business. And again, like and share all the videos, because the business owners that I've interviewed really would like your help in getting the word out about their business. So with that, have an absolutely awesome week, everyone. And I will see you next Monday on Military Mondays. Bye, everyone.
All right. Thank you.